All right, buckle up, everybody, because we are diving deep into the world of cybersecurity. And specifically, we're looking at Microsoft Sentinel today. And we have a very cool source, actually. It's a transcript of a live training session led by, get this, a Microsoft security expert named Nestor.
Oh, yeah, I know Nestor. Yeah. This guy, he's amazing. He's like, ooh, he really knows his stuff. And what's even cooler is he doesn't just explain Sentinel. He really, dissects it.
Yeah.
Even debates with himself to try to figure out, what the best solution is for different scenarios. You really get this insider's look, how a pro thinks about this incredibly powerful tool.
I love those moments where he's like, well, should I do it this way? Or is it better to do it this way? It's like you're right there with him problem solving in real time.
Exactly. And we're going to explore all sorts of cool stuff today. We'll look at Sentinel connectors, how to set them up, and then we're going to dive deep into Copilot for security, which, spoiler alert, is pretty darn amazing. And we'll touch on, of course, things like the cost considerations, log analytics, and even GDPR compliance.
All the fun stuff. So, let's kick things off with the basics. What exactly is Sentinel, and why is everyone in cybersecurity making such a fuss about it?
Well, imagine the ultimate security guard for your cloud environment. That's Sentinel. It's a cloud-native SIEM, which stands for Security Information and Event Management. But honestly, it's so much more than just an event log. This thing, it analyzes data from all sorts of sources, detects threats in real time, and can even automate responses.
So it's not just telling you what's wrong, it's also helping you fix it.
Exactly. It's like having a super smart security system that can not only connect the dots, but also take action to protect you.
No wonder Gartner and Forrester rank it as a leader in the field.
Oh, absolutely. And you're going to see throughout Nestor's session, just how powerful and versatile Sentinel really is.
Now, there's this thing that Nestor talks about called the Fused Log Analytics Workspace. I got to be honest, I wasn't super familiar with this before I dove into this transcript.
Yeah, it's a little technical. But essentially, each Sentinel instance is linked to a single log analytics workspace. They're inseparable, like two sides of the same coin.
A package deal.
Exactly. But here's the thing. This also means your cost per gigabyte of data ingested will be higher when you combine Sentinel and log analytics.
Okay, so it's powerful, but it comes with a price tag.
Right. But Nestor also points out that a standalone log analytics workspace is priced differently. So you have options, depending on your specific needs and budget.
So it's all about figuring out the right balance, right?
Absolutely.
Now let's talk connectors. These things seem to be the key to getting data into Sentinel. And Nestor, he meticulously walks us through setting them up.
Connectors are like specialized translators, bringing data from various sources right into Sentinel. Think of them as bridges connecting different parts of your security ecosystem.
Love that analogy. So in simpler terms, if I'm using, say, Azure Active Directory, there's a connector that brings all that juicy security data into Sentinel.
Yeah. You got it. He specifically focuses on connectors like Azure Activity and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more about those.
Well, the Azure Activity connector, that brings in logs of literally every single action taken within your Azure environment. Talk about visibility.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly powerful.
It is. You can see who's doing what, when, where. It's all there.
And then the Defender for Endpoint connector.
That one's all about endpoint security. It feeds in data from all your devices that are protected by Microsoft Defender. So you get this unified view of everything happening on your endpoints.
And we're talking a massive amount of information from different sources, all flowing into Sentinel for analysis.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. Nestor highlights a crucial detail about configuring data collection rules.
Oh, yeah, I remember this part. He gets really specific about where you configure them, right?
He does. He says configuring them within Sentinel versus outside of it has huge implications for what types of logs you could actually pull in.
It's a secret menu, unlocking all sorts of extra data.
It really is. And he especially emphasizes this for security logs from Windows.
Okay, so walk me through that.
So if you configure data collection rules outside of Sentinel, you're limited in what you can collect. You might only get basic audit logs, for example.
But if you do it inside Sentinel,
boom. You unlock a much wider range of security event data.
So it's not just about connecting the data source. It's about how you fine-tune those connections.
Exactly.
Now, another thing that Nestor talks about that I found really interesting is the whole world of permissions. Why are those so critical when we're talking about Sentinel and connectors?
Well, think about it. You don't want just anyone messing around with these incredibly powerful tools, right?
Right.
It's all about making sure the right people have the right level of access to protect your sensitive data and the integrity of your security system.
So it's like the principle of least privilege.
Exactly. Only giving people the bare minimum access they need to do their jobs. And Nestor actually goes through all the different roles and permissions within Azure, explaining who needs what level of access to perform specific tasks.
Super helpful for anyone setting up Sentinel in their own environment.
Absolutely. And it raises an important question for you, actually. How are you handling permissions for your security team? Are you following that principle of least privilege?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. Now, we've talked about connectors, we've talked about permissions, but it wouldn't be a deep dive into modern security without talking about, you guessed it, AI. And Nestor spends a good chunk of time on Copilot for security.
And for good reason. This thing is a game changer.
I'm really intrigued by this.
Imagine having your own AI-powered security analyst, constantly learning, evolving, helping you investigate threats, hunt for vulnerabilities, and respond to incidents with incredible speed and accuracy.
So instead of me, manually sifting through mountains of logs and alerts, Copilot can help me pinpoint the most critical issues and guide me toward the right actions.
Exactly.
That sounds amazing, but also a little intimidating.
It can be a lot to take in at first, but Nestor does a great job of breaking it down.
Yeah, I was impressed by how practical his approach is.
He really wants you to understand not just what Copilot is, but how to actually use it in the real world.
And it's important to understand the key difference between Copilot and, say, the auto-remediation features of Microsoft Defender.
Oh, absolutely. This is something that often trips people up.
So break it down for me.
Think of Defender as a security guard who can automatically neutralize a threat.
Okay, I can see that.
Copilot, on the other hand, is more like a detective who investigates, analyzes, and advises you on the best course of action.
So it's not taking direct action?
Not directly, no. It's giving you the insights you need to make informed decisions.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's more about empowering the human security team.
Yeah.
Now, I remember reading that Copilot is available in a couple of different ways.
Right.
You can access it as a standalone web portal.
You got it.
But it's also embedded within other Microsoft security products.
That's right. So you have options.
What are the trade-offs there?
Well, the standalone portal gives you the full power of Copilot with all the bells and whistles, customization options.
Oh.
It might consume more security compute units, which can impact your cost.
Makes sense. And the embedded experience.
More streamline, integrated into your existing workflows.
So easier to use, but maybe with some limitations.
Exactly.
So it all comes back to finding the right balance between functionality and cost effectiveness.
Absolutely. And that's a theme that runs throughout Nestor's entire session. He constantly encourages you to think strategically about how you're using these tools to optimize both security A&D budget.
Because let's be real, using Copilot and ingesting massive amounts of data into Sentinel, it's not free.
Not exactly, no. And this is where those security compute units come into play, or SCUs for short.
Right, we talked about those earlier.
The more complex your queries, the more data you're processing, the more SCUs you consume, and the higher your costs.
So you really got to be mindful of how you're using these powerful features.
You do. And that's where Nestor's experience and practical advice really shine through. He gives specific examples of how to optimize costs, like filtering data sources, fine-tuning your queries.
So you're not just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Exactly.
It's about being smart, strategic.
Working smarter, not harder.
I remember Nestor brought up GDPR compliance, which might seem like a bit of a tangent.
Yes. GDPR. It's all the rage these days.
It is. But how does it actually tie into Sentinel?
Well, GDPR, or the General Data Protection Regulation, it's a set of rules designed to protect the personal data of individuals in the European Union.
Right.
And it has huge implications for any organization that collects, stores, or processes data from EU citizens.
That's a big deal.
A very big deal.
And Sentinel can help.
It actually has built-in features and capabilities that can help organizations meet GDPR requirements.
So it's not just a security tool, it's also a valuable asset for ensuring data privacy and regulatory compliance.
Exactly.
Now, I'm really curious about Nestor's live demonstration.
Oh, they're incredible.
It sounds like he really brings these concepts to life in a way that's easy to grasp.
This is where the transcript becomes pure gold. We get to see exactly how Nestor configures connectors, sets up those crucial data collection rules, and interacts with Copilot in real time.
Like we're right there with him.
Exactly.
And from what I've read, he seems to have a real knack for explaining complex technical concepts in a way that's easy to understand.
Oh, he's a natural teacher. He uses analogies, real-world examples. It's like he can break down complex ideas into bite-sized pieces that anyone can understand.
I think that's what makes this training session so effective. It's informative, but it's also engaging and entertaining.
You don't feel like you're being lectured to. You feel like you're part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's like you're sitting right there in the room with him, learning from a master.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to unpack in this transcript.
Especially when it comes to Copilot and how Nestor uses it to solve real-world security challenges.
And that's what we'll be diving into next time. We'll explore how Nestor interacts with Copilot, the kinds of questions he asks, and the incredible insights he's able to uncover.
So buckle up, folks. We're about to see Copilot in action and discover how it can take your security game to a whole new level.
It's going to be epic.
I can't wait.
Okay, so picking up where we left off. Nestor, he really starts diving deep into Copilot here. And honestly, it's pretty mind-blowing what this technology can do.
Yeah, I was reading through the transcript and I was like, whoa, this is next level stuff.
It really is.
It's not just hype. This is the real deal.
And what's so cool is he actually shows you how to interact with Copilot using natural language, like you're just having a conversation with a security expert.
It's like, hey, Copilot, tell me about this weird thing I'm seeing.
Exactly. And the results you get back, they're not just data dumps. Copilot gives you these concise summaries, points out the most relevant information, and even suggests next steps for you.
So it's not just about finding the problem, it's about understanding it and knowing what to do next.
Exactly. And Nestor doesn't stop there. He shows you how to use Copilot to generate reports, too.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about investigations.
Nope. Think about all the time security teams spend compiling data, formatting reports. Copilot can automate that whole process.
That would free up so much time for teams.
Right. They can focus on more strategic stuff, the things that really require that human touch.
And the best part, Copilot is constantly learning and improving.
Absolutely. The more you interact with it, the better it understands your environment, and the more tailored its responses become.
It's like having a security expert on your team who's always learning.
Exactly.
And Nestor makes a good point. It's not just about reacting to threats. You can use Copilot proactively, too.
Absolutely. You can identify potential risks before they even become problems.
So, like, how would you do that?
Say you're worried about a specific vulnerability. Maybe there's a new exploit going around. You can ask Copilot to analyze your systems, and it'll tell you if you're vulnerable or not.
That's incredible.
It is.
But, of course, all this amazing functionality comes at a cost.
Right. We got to talk about the elephant in the room. Those security compute units, or SCUs.
Yeah, Nestor emphasizes the importance of understanding the pricing model.
Because you don't want to just run wild with Copilot and then get hit with a massive bill.
So how do you avoid that?
Well, Nestor's got some great tips. He shows you how to optimize your queries, filter data sources, all to reduce the number of SCUs you're consuming.
So you're being strategic.
Exactly. You're making sure you're getting the most value out of Copilot without breaking the bank.
And Nestor actually shows you how to do this, right?
He does. It's fascinating to watch him work. He's so methodical and deliberate.
Like a surgeon? You're not just getting the what, you're getting the how.
And that's what makes this training so valuable.
Now, remember when Nestor brought up GDPR compliance?
Oh, yeah, GDPR. Can't forget about that.
It might seem a little off topic at first, but it actually highlights a really important aspect of Sentinel.
Because GDPR, it's not just about protecting data from hackers. It's about managing data responsibly and ethically.
And Sentinel can help with that.
It can. It has built-in features that can help organizations meet GDPR requirements.
So, like, what kind of features?
Well, for example, it can help with data discovery and classification. Imagine you need to figure out where all your sensitive personal data is stored.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It can be. But Sentinel can help you track it down.
So it's not just a security tool.
It's a compliance tool, too.
Now, I'm dying to see these live demonstrations.
Me too. Because we've talked about connectors, Copilot, GDPR, but what does it all look like in action?
That's the beauty of this transcript. We get a front row seat to Nestor's process.
And trust me, it's worth the price of admission.
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Copilot, but now I really want to see it in action. Let's get to those demos.
All right, you ready for this? Nestor does not disappoint. He really shows you what Copilot can do, like how it can actually solve problems, not just generate a bunch of data.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
It's amazing he's interacting with Copilot using, like, natural language.
Almost like he's talking to another person, right?
Exactly. It's like he's having a conversation with a super smart AI security expert.
He gives examples in the transcript like, hey, Copilot, investigate suspicious login attempts from this IP address, or show me the latest threat intelligence on this vulnerability. And the results, I mean, they're impressive.
They are. Copilot doesn't just dump a bunch of raw data on you, It gives you these nice, concise summaries, highlights what's important, and even suggests what to do next.
So it's not just about finding the needle in the haystack. It's about understanding what the needle means.
Exactly. And Nestor goes even deeper. He shows how Copilot can analyze user behavior, correlate events across different systems. It can even predict potential attack paths, which is, I mean, that's just crazy.
It's like having a crystal ball for your security, kinda.
Kinda, yeah. It's like an early warning system for your whole infrastructure.
And what's even cooler is how seamlessly it integrates with other Microsoft security products. Like we talked about, it's available as a standalone portal, but Nestor also shows it embedded right into the Defender portal.
Right in there, making it so easy to use. It's a great example of how Microsoft is really streamlining its security offerings.
It's crazy to think how much all of this has advanced in just the past few years. Makes you wonder what the future holds.
For real, if this is what we can do today, imagine what security is going to look like in 5-10 years.
Mind-blowing stuff. Well, I think we've covered a lot in this deep dive. Sentinel's core capabilities, those essential connectors, the power of Copilot. We even touched on GDPR. What are your final thoughts on Nestor's training?
It's a treasure trove of practical information and real-world examples. It's clear that Nestor really knows his stuff.
Absolutely. The biggest thing that stood out to me was his emphasis on how security is not static, it's dynamic.
Right, it's not a one-and-done thing. It's a constant process.
Exactly.
Right.
He really encourages everyone to keep learning, to stay curious, embrace those new technologies.
Which is great advice for all of us, really, not just in cybersecurity.
For sure. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive. We've learned so much about Microsoft Sentinel, the importance of those connectors, how to configure them. We saw the incredible power of Copilot, even got to peek at some of those amazing demos.
We did. It was awesome.
Thanks to everyone for joining us on this journey through Nestor's world of Microsoft Sentinel. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive, where we, of course, uncover those hidden gems of knowledge. One source at a time. See you then.